Greetings, friends. I guess it can be a little unclear sometimes how the word pagan is used and what exactly it comes to mean. Now, that you could define it as worshiping creation, meaning forces in nature like the sky or the ocean or the mountain, or even individual trees and rocks would have their own spirit that you could worship. So there's that sense of not monotheism, kind of a polytheism, from more primitive forms to more, I guess you could say, developed forms in Hinduism. Now, there is another way of looking at it, which is that the pagans worshipped idols, but then maybe not all of them would have had necessarily idols, because the way an idol is defined, as I understand it, is the people worshipping an idol believe that there is really a supernatural being or a god inside the object itself, inside the wood or inside the golden calf. They would usually have to feed the idols with a sacrifice of blood and or maybe even humans sometimes. But I would point out that in Israel, in the Old Testament, my understanding is that the sacrifice was not God, like the Trinity, like eating this bullock or whatever you're sacrificing on the altar. It was actually eaten by the priests later. So this wasn't actually feeding the God or our God. It was more like God feeding us, in a way, through the priests consuming the burnt offering at the end. So when people I hear say Easter is pagan, you shouldn't celebrate Easter, and the Western celebration of Christmas on December 25th, that's pagan, Santa Claus is pagan, and like I see their arguments. I see that a lot of these things do come from the pagan world originally. I think they were changed and modified, of course, which is significant. So I don't necessarily see that it has to be a pagan thing just because you're using a pagan date and revamping a pagan celebration or festival into a Christian festival. I don't see what's wrong with that. That's natural. And but I mean, on the other hand, I can see that Christmas, maybe it's all about materialism now. So you can make the argument that maybe there is something to it, that there is this resurgence of paganism in some of these things, but merely for the fact of being on a certain date, or merely for the fact of trying to use a pre-Christian cultural attribute, I don't think that's an argument that therefore you are worshiping demons. I don't see how that logically follows. And so why would I be saying this? Why am I saying that not all of the pagan world needs to be rejected? Well, this has to do with the concept of Logos Spermatikos. I guess you could just say that there is a natural order in the world. There is truth. Jesus Christ personifies and embodies the truth because he is eternal, along with the Father and the Holy Spirit. This natural order expresses itself all throughout the world, all throughout human societies. There's certain natural patterns that have a natural reason or intuitive purpose why certain things always express themselves, like heterosexuality, like natural healthy things. So this is why there is lots of truths in pagan philosophy and in their worldview, but they didn't have the wholeness of the truth that was completed by Christianity. They did have to jettison some of their old beliefs, but others, which were already within the Logos, Spermatikos meaning the seeds of truth. Seeds of truth in the world, of course, because God created the world. How could he not be operating on it, even among the Gentiles before they were given the word? So for example, a lot of people like to go to South America. They do the ayahuasca ceremony with the shaman in the jungle. I did it once. Once was enough. If you're dealing with a semi or somewhat at least professional shaman, he should require you to cleanse yourself before the ritual. Don't eat spicy food or alcohol or smoke or anything like that for at least 5 or 6 days before you're doing the ritual. And give a lot of thought to what you want to get out of this experience. What do you want to ask Mother Ayahuasca for? And Mother Ayahuasca, I believe, is like the mother goddess or a fallen angel, not of God. So that's where the whole worldview down there goes awry. That's where they're operating outside the truth. But to illustrate this concept that there are seeds of the truth in the pagan world, what I was just telling you there about cleansing yourself, approaching this ritual very seriously with the good intention, that is something we could relate to as Christians. That is the same way we should approach worship in church. Same idea. I mean, I don't necessarily mean you have to fast for 5 days before going to a church, but fasting is part of the traditional Christian life. There is a certain asceticism there, or at least approaching a certain occasion as different, as more serious. So that's definitely true in the pagan world. A veneration of ancestors, you even see this in China. Now, I'll talk about this more in another video. The why Orthodox pray for the dead, not to the dead, for the dead. Why they do that. But I'll just say for now that this is a practice in the pagan world. I don't know necessarily about like necromancy and trying to talk to the dead. I think that would probably be getting in the realm of contacting evil spirits. So that would be wrong. However, venerating and praying for those who have departed, those who you loved in your lifetime, those who you believe had a good heart, that is a continuation in Orthodox Christianity, which was right in the pagan world. So when you say, oh, you can't do something that's pagan, it's like, and I mean, I'm talking about worldview things. What about just the fact that, like, the pagan world, what do you mean? Like, the pagans, they had agriculture, they had families, they had metalworking, they made metal tools, they made ships and explored the seas and the oceans. Like the Vikings went across the Atlantic Ocean. So are you telling me that those things are wrong? That those things are false? Well, it's like we haven't defined our terms very well. Those are part of the pagan world, even pagan crafts, you could say, tied up with certain pagan beliefs, but in themselves they were not false. They're part of the truth, these things. Yeah, in Taoism, the way, or in Confucianism in China, they don't have the wholeness of the truth. That like they don't have the actual personified Christ, the incarnate Christ in Taoism. But from what I've heard, there is some, like, Christ came to show us the way, and there are going to be certain truths that probably Taoism picked up on, and likewise in like Confucianism, the idea of it wasn't such of a religion, but it was more like social harmony. So the hierarchy naturally, like how to achieve this social harmony. There are timeless lessons there in Confucianism, which is pagan. The ancient Celts arguably had the first hospitals in Europe. Now, I don't know if that's true, but the book I was reading, Peter Beresford Ellis was making that argument that the ancient Celts, I guess in Ireland or maybe elsewhere, they had hospitals which were spiritual places. They weren't just a place to go and get healed. It was connected to your spiritual health as well. They were kind of, I guess, run by druids or monks or something, or they had a certain institution in their society. They had the ancient Celts also had roads. They had a lot of things which the Romans already had. They were pagan, and probably overall misguided. I don't know if they were sacrificing humans, the ancient Celts. They might have been doing a bit, but so did the ancient Romans. I mean, are we going to say, that's the thing, I mean, because even the barbarians and then the Roman Empire for a while was not Christian. Both the Romans and, for a while at least, before they were converted. So the Roman Empire, I mean, and there was a certain brutalism to the Roman Empire, but I don't think you can just toss everything out about it as, oh, it's all pagan, it all needs to go. Like, that would be a bit rash, in my opinion. In Buddhism, which again is misguided. There's no God. Or maybe in some forms of Buddhism there are gods, but no one creator God and no Jesus Christ. So it's lacking a lot, but there are truths there, like for example the aim of transcending worldly desires, like the desire for food all the time, or for sex, or these sorts of things, to not let these worldly urges dominate us and control us. That is definitely a truth in this pagan worldview of Buddhism. The ancient Greeks, who were pagans with all their, pantheon of gods, despite this chaotic pantheon of gods and the drama and fighting each other and incest and murder, despite that chaotic, somewhat lacking moral foundation, which is the problem with the pagan world, despite all that, the ancient Greeks developed a philosophy and an alphabet and a language with the right tools that brought our understanding onto a new level, particularly with Christianity spreading. So that was essential, and it came from the pagan world. So there are ways, the ancient church, the church fathers in the first millennium, there would have been lots of writing and discussion on this topic of how to read the pagans. They did not instruct young men to just turn away from pagan philosophy, like Plato and Aristotle. Obviously in Plato and Aristotle there's lots of truth, but they also are, getting other things wrong. So just to conclude, when we hear Easter is continued on the pagan date, or this parallel here in the pagan world, or this symbol here in the pagan world, it's you're going to have to do a bit more argumentation to convince me that this is necessarily demonic. You're going to have to do a lot more. You're going to have to understand that a lot of the pagan world continues for good reason into the present, because there are pieces and seeds of the truth. We're trying to get into the wholeness of the truth by Christ. That's what we're trying to do here. Hasta luego, amigos.